I think this is the first interview where someone was bold enough to mention the messenger and my thoughts on the messenger. So many people are afraid, even to this day, to bring up the messenger. As you know, I love the messenger, period. Without him, I don't think my own siblings would have made it past their teenage years. I don't think my mother would have made it because my family was in the nation. When I was a child at Mosque 54, Compton Mosque, my siblings were in the mosque. I learned how to pray in Arabic before I learned how to pray in English. I used to watch them, my mother, my brothers and sisters and all of them. I would watch how they would operate. My stepfather used to sell the fish, Final Call, took them out of gang life, out of drug life. Every description you mentioned that the messenger cleaned up people from these different conditions, my family was in all of those. Drug dealers, prostitutes. My older sister was on Skid Row for 16 years, strung out on crack cocaine, downtown LA. We all have Arabic names. So if it were not for the example and the teaching of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, I don't think I would be here, regardless to what any...
That's a testimony right there.
I mean, really.
Yeah, and I feel it.
Like we said in this generation, no cap.
Yeah.
No lie at all.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't give a damn what anybody has to say. No weird, punctified, ignorant, half-witted Negro on the internet who hasn't built up a 2x4 plot of grass, let alone an $80 million net worth of an entire nation of people. Self-sustained, beautiful, cleaned up. You talking about having knowledge of self, knowledge of God, knowledge of the time and what must be done, the knowledge of who the devil is by name and description. Thoroughly knowing what to do, not blaming nobody, but getting up. It is nation time. Do for self or suffer the consequences. You blame the white man, but you don't do nothing for yourself. What are you doing? If it were not for this, and the example of the Honorable Minister Farrakhan, and the example of Brother Malcolm X, and the example of Brother Walathuddin Muhammad, because he did beautiful work as well. If it were not for the example of Mother Tainetta Muhammad, Sister Clara Muhammad, I went to Sister Clara Muhammad's school. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. To where she carried on the torch when the messenger was arrested to keep the schools going because the teachers were arrested back then. See, we don't think because we see people on the internet getting likes and views that means you accomplished something. I don't get caught up in that nonsense, clearly, or else I would have stopped talking a long time ago to maintain whatever platform this enemy allowed me to build up in their world. I'm not interested in that. So if it were not for the example, the teaching, the sacrifice of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, a man who didn't even make it to high school.
Yes.
And did more than all of the so-called college graduates, post-collegiate professors. If it were not for that man, again, I don't think there would be a Rizza Islam. I don't think so, to be honest with you. And again, I don't even think my family would have made it if it were not for that man and his teaching. That's why when people try to talk, I just look at them.
How did you get into this?
Well, before I became a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I was in really was in bad shape. And I know, and this is one of the reasons why I have such strong faith in Mr. Muhammad. I know what he has done for me. Not only me, hundreds of thousands of others just like me.
Well, what kind of bad shape were you in?
Well, I was a typical Negro Christian, which means I got drunk, I lived in nightclubs, gambled.
You think all Negro Christians do this? I have a very good friend who was voted mostly one of the outstanding 10 young men of the country, who is a Negro clergyman, and whom I have great and wonderful respect for.
Excuse me, you'll find many Negroes who don't do this, but I think
you said you were a typical Negro Christian.
I think your sociologists blow up the fact that in the Negro community is the most crime, the most dope addiction, the most prostitution, the most juvenile delinquency, and the most mothers, unwed mothers. And this is a curse in our particular society, and I was a part of that. And but after hearing the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I was able to pull myself away from it, along with hundreds of thousands of other black people in this country who were in that same trap, who have also pulled themselves from it.
Is it true that you have a prison record?
Definitely. I was in prison for 7 years. It was in prison that I first heard the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I might add this, that the first year that I was in prison didn't rehabilitate me in any way, shape, or form. The prisons aren't set up to rehabilitate Negroes. They're set up to perpetuate the criminal tendencies of Negroes. And it was only after all of the penologists and sociologists had failed, Mr. Muhammad goes into the prisons and takes men like me and others and is able to straighten them out just by teaching them the truth and restoring their racial consciousness, racial pride, and racial dignity.